It's interesting because, and this is again not something that I should be saying, but every single company that I talked to in the last, let's say, 2 years, 3 years. So when I was at MRM, now that I'm at the bank, every company is developing systems that would increase its efficiency. Forget AI, like even if it's AI, if it's a robotic process automation, every company wants to find efficiencies.
Yeah.
Now, if you translate that into human talk, it's basically how do we displace more FTEs in order to save cost?
Yeah.
This we're proactively. There's nothing wrong with that. It's development, it's progress, it's technological advancement, but at the same time, we are expediting the rate with which we displace people.
Yeah. It's funny how I keep having these flashbacks to different Star Trek episodes.
Well, do tell.
Well, there's an episode where they come across a planet and they have an AI, called the custodian.
Mm-hmm.
It basically runs the planet. The people, like, it's a utopian society where people don't have to work, you don't have to farm, you don't have to do everything. Like the custodian just takes care of everything. You need food, you just say, custodian, I need what's for dinner tonight, and it just materializes or whatever. But the premise of the show is they basically lure the Enterprise there, and then they want to kidnap all the children from the Enterprise because they're all sterile, because through whatever the radiation of the custodian or the planet, whatever's happened, is they've realized that they can't reproduce, and so eventually their society will just disappear. So now they're trying to steal children from other species to kind of kickstart their society again. But the problem is they don't know how anything works. They just know to say, custodian, make my dinner, but they don't know how to actually do anything. And it's kind of that you all these advancements is to get people from doing mundane, tedious tasks or whatever, so everything's taken care of. You can just focus on enjoying your life and the pursuit of happiness. I don't know, whatever it is. It's interesting.
Well, oh my God. Oh, hold on. You know what? Sometimes I have a sinking feeling though that the people who used to call them science fiction writers were actually some sort of soothsayers or could see into the future, because what you're describing is, yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
You've seen those kitchen robots that like have those mechanical arms, and they source food from the fridge, and fridge reorders food from stores, and then they just chop it all up.
Yeah,
unleash that on the Western society. In less than a generation, you won't be able to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, given the way that we're going, and again, Greg, I'm going to hold on to your hope like that's the last thing that's available to me. Because if you're a glass half full, that's fantastic. Give it another 5 years, and then you will have a group of society, a large slice of society and kids mostly, like beyond, like between the ages of 5 and 9. So those who were just born to the age of 5, and those who were 5 to the age of 10, who will have serious anxiety about walking around without masks.
Yeah.
In fact, I would argue that they would prefer to stay masked.
Yeah.
Which means they would never know what a smile looks like.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because there's a lady that I met the other day.
Mm-hmm.
She runs a business doing like parenting coaching, and she put out on the group that I'm in, looking for people to interview that are parents or whatever, because she's launching a program. So I volunteered to talk to her. Anyway, she was telling me, like, I was telling her about my kids and whatever, and answering questions, but she said her daughter's 16. And because I was saying how great it is, my kids are so happy to be back at school. And she says her daughter had a high anxiety before,
Yep.
and now it's worse. And now she won't even go to school. Like she's still doing remote learning, even though
Really?
the schools are open,
Oh,
because
no.
she is basically got so much anxiety about the social component of school. And she didn't really say if it was related to COVID or not, or if it was just
Well, does it matter what it's related to?
no. Well, no, but or if it's just generally like interacting with real human beings. But it's like, you know, what you just said is like, I don't even think it'll be 5 years. You know, you got kids right now who forgot how to be human. It's funny you say that, because I've seen news stories where they talk about the all this, especially mandates of masks and vaccines for young children, and the irreparable mental damage that we've done to these children for exactly the point you just said. Like kids who won't want to leave the house, won't want to go somewhere because of fear of death from a virus that has, you know, they're more likely to die in a car accident on the way to their party than they are to get a virus and die.
But see, Greg, so the problem I see is the fact that you're quoting actual stats,
Yeah.
stats that are true across the world. And
Yeah.
yet there's a big part of our society that lives out beyond those facts.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
I don't know.
Those facts are not hidden. You can go look them up.
Well, there's a large part of society, and it's not a lack of knowledge of facts.
Mhm.
It's like a general irrelevance of facts. Even, I don't know if you've followed this the Kyle Rittenhouse trial in the States.
Yes, you're still recording this.
Yeah.
Use this as an appendix.
Yeah.
This is what you said is actually very, very, very. Go ahead, please.
But it's like, so there in that particular case, there's 2 years or 18 months of misinformation by the mass media about what's going on. In fact, to mislead people to think that the people that he killed were people of color, because it supported the narrative of a white supremacist at a BLM protest murdering people. And to the point where I think what I heard was that there's like media in countries like in Europe and in Australia and things who they were convinced that the people that had been murdered were not white. And then just in the from watching the coverage of the trial, they're like, wait a minute, he killed white people? So it's a white guy killing white people. Like, what does this have to do with race? But it was like, and now that the truth has come out, it's like there's a large portion of society who's so invested in their narrative that the truth doesn't even matter. Like you say, well, but that's not the facts. They go, yeah, but that doesn't matter. It's the narrative that matters. And you're like, how can the facts not actually matter?
That's exactly what makes me say WTF.
Yeah.
Is because I remember that conversation I had with my grandfather, who was completely sold into the narrative of the Soviet Party. And remember, I was born into that.
Yeah.
Any child who's born into this knows nothing else.
Yeah.
So for me, it was never a question of, oh, is this right or is this wrong?
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
That's my life. And it's kind of like it's the basic development principles. You do this, you get good things. You do this, you get bad things.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do more of the good things. You don't question what those good things are. It's just being told that this is the good thing.
Yeah.
So trusting the party was a good thing. But then everything came down, and I had a conversation with my grandpa, explaining to him that this was me. This was like late teens. All of a sudden, this like, oh my God, I'm so wise.
Yeah.
And of course, in late teens, you're always black or white, so there's no grayscale. So I was explaining to him how the economy is going to improve now that all of this, and he didn't buy it.
Yeah.
He could see it, but he wouldn't buy it. It's exactly like what you were talking about. It's the investment. It's just so many years have been spent living with one particular framework, that when that framework collapses, you are holding on to it for your dearest life, duct taping it all around, like gluing it,
Yeah.
and refusing to acknowledge that it's collapsing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that trial does well, and then, but if we go back to our favorite pandemic situation,
Yeah.
Gibraltar, Ireland, Israel are just examples of countries with one of the highest in on the whole planet vaccination rates.
Yeah.
And they're having spikes of breakout cases.
Yeah.
I don't even know like deaths or anything, but they're saying it's bad. That's what they're transmitting.
Yeah.
How is it no one pauses and says, wait, hold on. Good test cases. So they've done everything we told them that will work. And now it's not working.
Yeah.
So I think I have a solution. We're going to do more of what's not working.
Doubling down. Yeah.
Not only are we going to do more of it, we're going to make sure that everyone participates.
Yeah.
How does that not create a question?
Yeah.
Like it, and the point is, it's not about, you want a vaccine? Please, by all means, it's a choice. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
But you're saying it.
Well, that's the same with the mask mandate too. It's like the in Florida and whatever, where they've banned mandates. They're not banning masks. Like if you want to wear a mask, you wear a mask till the cows come home.
Yeah.
It's your choice. But the media positions as a ban on a mandate is actually a ban on masking, which it isn't. It's a ban on a mandate. It's I don't know. There's going to be well, in this latest thing with this parade in Wisconsin.
What? Sorry, I did not know what that was all about.
So it was not last night, but the night before, I guess. So there's a Santa Claus parade or a Christmas parade, and a guy basically drove his SUV into the parade. So far, there's 6 people dead and 48 or 50 people injured. A bunch of kids still in critical condition. But anyway, this guy is a serial criminal who he attempted to I don't know if it was kidnap or murder his wife or ex-wife and run her over with the car, and he got out on $1,000 bail. And then within a week of being out on bail, and he's got other warrants for other stuff in other parts of the country. But it's basically this the elimination of bail because it's racist is putting criminals back on the street. And this guy goes back on the street and he decides to drive his car over 50 people at a parade. But then, like you said, the doubling down, the supporters of that policy, instead of saying, you know what, hold on, we need to revisit this because clearly we're letting bad people out into the street that are harming innocent people. They say, no. There's actually a quote from this one district attorney from 2007 where he says, I can guarantee that somebody that I redirect or let go is going to kill somebody. It's going to happen. I guarantee it. But that doesn't invalidate the need for this policy. And when people accept it, it's like, what? And this guy could have been reelected as a DA. It's like crazy town.
It is.
And then the mainstream media on their coverage, they've just been referring to it as an SUV crashed into a parade.
What?
They're not saying a madman has murdered 50 people.
Why not?
Because
what's their angle?
Because he's a product of their policies.
Fucking hell. Beautiful.
So it's just like it's bizarro world. It's like, what the fuck is going on?
Oh my God, I did not know that story. And that's terrifying and very upsetting too.
Yeah. Well, there's a dance troupe called Dancing Grannies or something that took the brunt of the first collision. this guy, like he was the first group that he ran over. I think 5 or 6 of the people that had been killed were part of the dancing grannies.
Okay.
And it's like, and running over children, like you just imagine like if you've ever been to a Santa Claus parade.
Greg, it's a very close to home subject, so I can't even begin to imagine that.
So it's anyway, and then now he's got $5 million bail.
Yeah.
It's like a little too little too late.
Yeah. But meanwhile, it's what is happening?
But in New York and California, there's all kinds of examples of people who are apprehended, put into the system, out the next day. Like there's people, punching elderly people on the street, shooting people, and they're back out in the street in 24 hours because it's the right thing to do. They're mentally ill. They don't deserve to be in jail. But I don't know. What about the people that are just walking down the street and get attacked and murdered, or who knows what else? But
well, what about it's the same case of how do you remember about 2 or 3 years, 3 years ago and before in Ontario, we always had this terrible debate about the fact that teachers were made to work in overcrowded classrooms.
Yeah.
And they had like students were just piling on top of each other and they couldn't give enough attention to the students.
Yeah.
And the terrible government of conservatives and liberals, it's like all of them were never giving enough funding for schools.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't have a vested interest at that point in time, and I didn't really follow it. It's just like background noise when you listen to the news, because again, it didn't affect me.
Yeah.
But now that I'm getting close to that, and I'm seeing teachers being fired for their decisions, which have absolutely nothing to do with their ability to teach.
Yeah.
Nothing, like completely nothing. How are we making that problem worse? How is Biden's, I think Biden said that truck drivers need to be vaccinated now, and somebody in their union down in the States said 30,000 are going to walk off the job. How is that going to ease our logistics chain?
Yeah.
Like, what are we solving for? Are we solving for ways to make our lives more miserable?
Yeah. I saw something in the UK, the National Health Service. I think it's like 100,000 people are about to be fired.
Yeah, the doctors and nurses. Yeah,
you're just going to take 100,000 healthcare professionals out of the system, and that's not going to put people at risk. I think that, I don't know, the whole mandate thing is just there's another story in the US. It was a guy he won Teacher of the Year last year.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been fired for not getting his vaccine.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I mean, we talked about this before, but it's been, Jesus Christ, you don't have to be a scientist to claim it was been scientifically proven.
Yeah.
Ottawa Senators,
Yeah.
COVID outbreak.
Yeah.
Big party, everyone vaccinated, COVID outbreak. It doesn't protect you. So
but you know what the funny thing is? COVID outbreak. 10 days later, they're all back playing hockey. Nobody's even, maybe somebody lost their taste. I don't know, but it's like, who cares? Like they're not
like, I mean, this is the thing. It's exactly what we talked about in the main portion of this episode.
Yeah.
It's the polarization. There's never a middle ground.
Yeah.
It has to be either this, like this has to be black, or this has to be white.
Yeah.
Because sure, does they exist? Does the disease exist? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Does it present itself in severe cases? It does. Do people die from it or have long COVID?
Yeah.
They do. Now, the interesting thing is, this is nothing of what I just rhymed off is new to the medical world.
No.
We always had complications. We used to call them complications.
Yeah.
From many different diseases. Many very, holy crap, flu used to take away people's lives.
Yeah.
But we were willing to take that risk. Yeah. All of a sudden, we're not willing to take any risks for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But you're right. They're all back on the ice playing hockey. Good for them. whatever they've done to combat this, their immune systems, they're working out. At the same time, I have not seen a single mainstream media, although I'm trying to avoid it altogether. So that's not a fair statement. Do you know how many Major League Football players actually like falling on their face on the pitch?
Yeah.
I don't follow soccer, football. I don't. But the numbers seem higher than. It's not a fair statement because I don't know the stats, so I don't know what the average is. But falling with flies, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems dark, and more importantly, it's like, for example, for all of the unvaccinated people. I mean, I sympathize. They can travel.
Yeah.
But you think about it. There are Canadians who cannot travel.
Yeah.
They can't leave the province. They cannot leave the country.
Yeah.
How the fuck does that work?
But not even like and maybe because we've never really traveled much. Like if we might go on a trip every couple of years or something that you would classify as traveling.
Yeah.
But traveling is not a big part of my lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Like eating at a restaurant is, and if you're not vaccinated, you can't eat at a restaurant.
Yeah, people won't be able to get into the restaurant.
I saw somebody shared something on Facebook yesterday. I can't remember if it was I think it was in Austria. It was either Austria or Australia, but they have like a curfew. So the unvaccinated can work. They can serve you at your restaurant and whatever, but after the curfew, they have to go home because now they're unclean and they can't intermingle with society, but they're allowed to come and work during working hours and interact with vaccines.
When you put it in those words, like I cannot help myself but feel like we're in Lewis's Carol Alice in Wonderland, because what you're saying cannot be true, and yet I know it is.
Well, this is like, it's funny because I've never really thought about it much, like the whole Second Amendment in the US, right? The right to have guns. This is exactly why you need to have guns.
That's true.
Because at some point, the government's going to overreach, and the public has to say, "Fuck you, we're not doing that anymore." And if you don't have guns, you have no way to fight back.
Well, my favorite YouTube personality, JP Sears, did an episode on that, and basically he's a comedian, so he puts everything in as a sarcastic ha 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 light, but he's very serious about what he talks about. Every single authoritarian regime before coming to full power, first thing is remove all of the guns. That happened in Russia before Soviet Union came into full power. That came in, who was that dude in South America?
Gaddafi.
It happened there.
No.
And don't forget, they've been trying to do that in the US. In Canada, it was even remember, in Canada it was prohibited, right?
Yeah.
New Zealand did the same thing.
Yeah.
And at first, when you're more liberal in your thinking and thinking that all people are good and they're trying to do the good for their people, politicians are trying to do good for the people. When you read about this, it's kind of like that terrible televised massacre in New Zealand in the mosque.
Yeah.
And another show you should watch is the HBO special on QAnon. It's called Into the Storm. Mm. Very interesting piece of actual good documentary work. It conflates many subjects, so I'll be just careful about that because it paints. But it has that. It was showing how it was publicized.
Yeah.
But on the heels of that, the natural inclination is, how do we avoid it? Take away the guns.
Yeah.
Take away the guns and recall Australia and New Zealand only now are thinking about the fact that their citizens can travel.
Yeah.
And only if you comply with the regulations.
Yeah.
Think about it. You're an island state. There's nowhere to
Where
go.
to go. Yeah.
I mean, I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I'm perplexed. And then at the same time, I have meetings at work.
Yeah.
Feels normal, right?
Yeah.
Feels like everything's the same. We're working, delivering some projects, this and that, all good stuff, talking about budgets. And I can't help but feel in the back of my mind, it's kind of like, it's surreal. It's as if people do not, and that's, sorry, it's as if people don't want to acknowledge that these shifts, societal shifts, are occurring right under their feet, like right with their children. Metaverse is being promoted. It's being advertised on TV. How are there not people in the streets saying, fucking hell, you want to take away our ability to think for ourselves and control what we think, feel, do, and interact with? But no, there's nothing like that. And I know, I mean, talking to you, it helps a lot, but at the same time, I can imagine how many people who are traumatized by being left on their own, by lockdowns, by just not having the social circle available to them, or random strangers in a coffee shop, but how many people kind of live with their thoughts. I mean, I understand what I'm thinking about, and I understand that, yeah, my conclusions, even if they're right, they're unfortunate, but they're just conclusions. They're not yet reality. And I know how many people can actually spiral out of control seeing this, and the only decision that they come to is that this is not worth it. And that's a terrifying thought.
It was funny because I mean, I just was thinking, like, even before all these mandates, anxiety, suicide rates, like all these things were going through the roof. And I haven't heard much about it recently, but I'm imagining now it's probably because it's even worse than it ever has been. Think about it. Like, think about the hundreds of thousands of people that have invested their entire life in a career, and they're willing to walk away from that because of a mandate.
You're right. It's and again, I'll draw this parallel, and I promise you, the last time, it used to be the norm that if you read something in the Pravda newspaper, Truth newspaper, that whatever you read, you can take a mirror to it, and that would have been the actual situation. So if they were claiming that the farmers had like a banner year collecting the crops in the fields, okay, start buying food now, because there's not going to be shit to eat in the winter. It was almost as that, and I feel the same thing is true here. If you don't talk about something, it's like probably is very bad. And then if you trumpet about something, it's like, yeah, that's probably a lie. But then again, maybe I'm just jaded. What are your kids? Hold on. This is an interesting one. Have you ever talked about your kids as how they perceive the world around them? Because they don't have the influence of you, because they probably couldn't care less about what dad thinks. I mean, yeah, in a respectful way, but really, I remember myself being a teenager.
No, I'd say they're mostly unaware of what's going on in the world. Like, their world is very small. Like, it's what's going on at school. How are my grades? Oh, I got to go to work. I got homework to do. Like, there's no real. The only thing I'd say though is that there's an aversion. Like, if they come down and I'm watching Fox News,
yes, I
have to like mute it or change the channel or pause it if they're like, I'm in the family room, which is open to the kitchen, because they don't want to hear it. They don't even like, it's like blinders on. I don't even want to know about what's going on in the world. I just want to live in my little bubble. And I mean, I say that, but at the same time, like when last summer there was a BLM protest in Guelph, and my wife and daughter went to it. and my daughter felt very strongly that she to support that. And like I have a black nephew who's adopted, so like we're BLM as a, I don't know what do you call it, like BLM the organization I have to separate from BLM the movement.
Yeah, that's I was just going to say that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the movement I'm all for, the organization not so much. But it's so
But
there was an element there of what's going on in the greater world. But I think that was extraordinary circumstances with that particular issue. For the most part, they're, I don't know, and they're so indoctrinated. Like when they come home and they talk about things that in the school, because they just get fed the liberal version of whatever, right? So it's funny though, because I think about indoctrination in a couple of ways. Like they go to Catholic school, so you would think they'd be heavily indoctrinated into the Catholic religion, but they got no time for it, no use for it.
What?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I would say, I'm the same way. Like I grew up in a very Christian, I mean, my parents were ministers in the Salvation Army, but like as soon as they gave me the freedom when I was 13 or whatever it was to decide if I wanted to go to church or not, I was like, yeah, I'm out. So I don't know. I mean, for me, the whole indoctrination thing, it's kind of like there's an element of it that I feel is real and true. And then there's another element is like, well, it's maybe it depends on what you're trying to indoctrinate them into. If it's going to church and whatever, then maybe they don't have as much time for it. Although it's funny, I was on a webinar today, and it was a guy who was trained for 25 years. He was a very senior guy, a psychiatrist in psychiatric medicine, and basically said, like, if you take two groups of people, so one group of people that believes in God and that there's an omnipotent being that is vengeful, and if you don't do what they say or live your life a certain way, you will be tortured for eternity, versus another group of people that is just lives with the belief of love and benevolence and doing the best you can. Which of those two groups of people do you think is going to grow up or live with more anxiety, fear, depression, and so on? Well, probably the one who thinks, like, if I'm living in a paradigm of burning in hell for eternity if I don't live a certain way, those people are going to be fucked up. Anyway, it's kind of an interesting point of view.
Hold on, run it by me again. So the two options are, there's a benevolent being, right?
So there's God.
Yes.
And there's basically organized religion that says if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you will suffer for eternity once you're done on this planet. Basically, you go to hell, and like you live a good life, you get to go to heaven. You live a bad life, you go to hell and are tortured for eternity. Versus I don't know if you call it an atheist. He didn't really use the word atheist, but just people who have a belief system that it's just live a good life and focus on love and understanding, and you don't have this kind of guilt over your head about like whatever the other side is. But it's kind of like I mean, I don't subscribe to, especially this day and age, that the people, the vast majority of people, I think, have kind of washed their hands. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what the numbers would be, but like all of the circles of people I grew up with and friends with and stuff, like very few of them are devoutly religious.
Well, maybe, I mean, I'm not, yeah, I buy that, but maybe something has been taken away from society by removing, at least if 2 years ago, if you were to ask me about religion, despite the fact that there was a period of life when I was
Yeah.
going to all services, all high holidays, like everything,
Yeah.
I do believe that organized religion is just a way of controlling people,
Yeah.
especially because there are different types of religion, and
Yeah.
each one says that the other one are the ones to be destroyed or converted.
Yeah.
That doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, taking all of that away creates a void in people's
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't want
this,
to say moral compass, but just life
yeah.
compass.
Yeah. But there's a separation, and this is what he talked about a little bit, between religion and spirituality, right? Like
Right.
it's the most people think of the things as being equivalent to each other, but they're
No,
not at all.
they're
Like
not.
religion is just a controlling mechanism. Spirituality is just like we are spiritual
And we're interconnected
being.
species on this
Exactly.
rock.
So anyway, it was a pretty interesting conversation.
So we are
As was
like,
this.
let's just put a summary, because this is this. So I did drag you out of your shell. You don't like to be on camera, but this is very interesting. Like some of the examples you provided really paint a brighter picture, not to say better picture, but a brighter picture on some of the convictions that we hold and how we evolve, and which scares me. Sorry, scared, not the right word. I'm not actually scared. I'm just in complete, not loss, but what do you strive for?
Well, one thing that a big part of what the three principles and what Jamie talks about, which I tend to believe in pretty strongly now, is like, as a human race, we have an innate capacity for resilience and well-being.
Yes.
And that has served us as a species for millions of years to get us to where we are today. So,
yes.
Whether and I suppose that's in some way, shape, or form, like all the science fiction dystopian futures.
Mm-hmm.
The silver lining is that whether it's nuclear holocaust or whatever, people survive and rebuild, and things.
Well, within the 2 hours that they show us.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. But you know what
Actually,
I mean? Like it's even Superman survived the destruction of Krypton.
you know what? This is a brilliant thing to maybe probably to end it on. And you know what we should do, because I'm looking at the time.
Yeah.
You can easily do it WTF Part 1 and WTF Part 2 appendix.
Yeah.
Because it's. Do you name a single movie, Hollywood movie? Well, that's kind of what we are raised on, where the future looks bright.
Yeah.
I'm thinking in my head. It's not a trick question.
Yeah. I know. I mean, there's feel good stories.
No, feel good stories is like how they make you feel. But like when the future is being painted, I'm struggling to find an example of where kind of a future in the distance is being painted as a good future.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Star Trek is an example where supposedly the human race comes together and there's no more poverty or famine on our planet, and it allows us to go off and explore the universe as a unified planet.
Good point. Yeah. Well, at least one.
I mean, but then it's like all the strife and stuff that existed on Earth is now just replaced with the same strife in the greater universe.
Because if as I start thinking about this, there's nothing that there's no single movie that comes to mind that has wow, that is sad.
Yeah. Well, even, I mean, the last few weeks, Saving Private Ryan's been on a lot. And I mean, that's a feel good story in the end.
But that's about the past.
Yeah. I guess so. But I mean, it's the enduring, I don't know, human spirit overcoming the adverse circumstances. I don't know.
I wish I had stats on this. I wish I had stats. But you're right. A lot of movies that look at the past and past events, past actual events, usually have a very like that positive message to them. And there's, even if it's drama, it evokes Schindler's List, for example.
Yeah.
Like it didn't end well for him.
Yeah.
And it didn't end well for a lot of people. But it shows that like if a single person can do this, there's hope. Fast forward, nothing is good.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, all science fiction movies, I mean, even if you escape planet Earth, being completely at peace and whatever, you're just running into other races or other species that want to destroy you.
Even in the feel-good movie that was Back to the Future Part 2.
Yeah.
Remember, even the one that they went to was not that good, and the one that they went in afterwards, it was even worse.
Yeah.
The alternate timeline. Anyway, we should end it here, but I'm sure we're not the only ones who thought about this, and I wonder how people went through this. There must be a book somebody written about this who eloquently explained this conundrum of human civilization.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure there'll be a lot of case studies coming out of this time period.
Yeah.
Well, I've jokingly said we're either going to end up with a generation of, what have I said? Geniuses or serial killers.
Yeah, or the combination of the two.
Yeah.
Genius serial killers.
Yeah. All right, man.
See you, Greg.
All right, we'll talk tomorrow.
Bye-bye.